Welcome to the European Association for Higher Education Advancement's YouTube and podcast channel. We're going deep today, folks, into the future of higher education in Europe.
That's right, and to guide us, we've got some incredible insights straight from the European Association for Higher Education Advancement themselves.
They go by EAEA. Great.
Exactly, EAEA.
So, to kick things off, can you give us a little background on EEA? What makes them such a good source for this deep dive?
Well, the EAEA has been a major player in European higher ed since 1997.
Wow, 1997.
Yeah, that's right.
They've been around for a while.
They have, and they've really established themselves as a leading voice in quality assurance and accreditation.
Okay, so we've got a credible source here. They've been in the game for a while. They know what's up.
For sure.
So what's the big question we're tackling today?
Basically, it boils down to this. How is higher education evolving, especially in Europe?
And what does that mean for all of us, for students, educators, anyone who cares about the future of learning, right?
Absolutely, that's the core of it.
Okay, so the EAA report highlights a pretty staggering statistic, I have to say.
Oh.
A 60% increase in European students taking at least one online course in just the last year.
Wow, 60%, that's huge.
It's a massive jump, right? So clearly online learning is exploding, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon.
It really doesn't. And, part of that is driven by just how much more accessible online learning is making higher education.
That makes sense.
Think about things like MOOCs, those massive open online courses.
Right, MOOC.
They're letting people from all over the world access courses from, top universities, sometimes even for free.
Okay, so imagine this. You learning from a renowned European university right from your living room.
Exactly. The possibilities are really exciting.
It is exciting, but is it really that simple? What about things like the digital divide?
Right. That's a crucial point.
Does everyone really have the tech, the internet access, the know-how to make the most of online learning?
It's definitely a challenge.
That's a big one.
While online learning has this incredible potential to make education more democratic, we can't ignore the very real barriers that exist.
Yeah, not everyone has that high-speed connection or even a quiet place to study.
Exactly. And then there's digital literacy skills.
Oh, right. Being able to actually navigate the online world effectively.
That's a whole other layer.
So online learning might be a game changer, but it's not a magic solution for every single issue.
I think that's a really important takeaway.
It's all about nuance, isn't it?
Definitely.
And speaking of game changers, we can't forget about how technology is changing the actual classroom experience.
It's incredible, isn't it?
AI, VR, it's like we're stepping into a sci-fi movie.
I know, right? Things that were once purely in the realm of science fiction are now becoming part of how we learn.
So let's break it down. What does that actually look like in practice? Give us an example.
Well, imagine AI-powered systems that personalize your education, like having a tutor in your computer.
A personal tutor in your computer. That's wild.
I know. These systems can tailor everything to your individual needs, from content recommendations to feedback, even assessments.
So no more one-size-fits-all approach to learning.
Not at all. It's all about meeting you where you are as a learner.
Wow, and then there's VR.
Right. Talk about immersive learning.
VR?
Think about studying anatomy with a virtual 3D model of the human body.
That would be incredible.
It's mind-blowing, right? Or even taking a virtual field trip to ancient Rome for his history lesson.
Okay, so we've got AI personalizing our learning journey. We've got VR making education more immersive and engaging.
It's a whole new world of possibilities.
It really is.
But this brings up another important question.
Yeah, with all this talk of online learning and futuristic tech, what happens to traditional universities?
They're at a crossroads, that's for sure.
Do they just become obsolete in this new world?
I don't think so, but they do need to adapt, and the EHEA report really emphasizes that.
How so? What kind of adaptations are we talking about?
Flexibility is key, offering more self-paced learning, blended models that combine online and in-person elements.
So basically, universities need to become more agile, more responsive to the changing needs of learners.
Exactly. They need to be more like startups in a way.
Interesting analogy.
And partnerships are going to be crucial.
Partnerships with who?
With everyone. Companies, tech providers, even other universities, sharing resources and expertise to create cutting-edge learning experiences.
So it's about collaboration, about breaking down those traditional silos.
Absolutely.
This brings up another big question.
What's that?
What kind of university experience will be most valuable in the future? What should students be looking for?
That's a great question. And honestly, it's one that every student needs to grapple with.
There's no easy answer, is there?
I think students should be looking for institutions that embrace both technology and human connection.
Okay, so finding that balance between high tech and high touch.
Exactly. A blend of personalized, tech-driven learning with access to mentors and a vibrant learning community.
It sounds like the best of both worlds.
I think so, and it's not just about universities either.
What do you mean?
The EAEA report also talks about the rise of alternative paths to education, things like boot camps and specialized programs.
Right, those are becoming increasingly popular.
They are, and for good reason.
Why do you think that is?
Well, they often offer very focused skills in a shorter time frame, a more direct route to a specific career.
So they appeal to people who need to upskill quickly or who are really sure about what they want to do.
Exactly. It's about efficiency and targeted learning.
And maybe affordability too, right? Those programs tend to be less expensive than a traditional four-year degree.
That's a factor for many people, for sure, though the report doesn't dive into the financial aspect as much.
Which brings us to a pretty crucial issue that the EAEA report does highlight. Affordability.
Right, the elephant in the room.
It's expensive to get a traditional degree.
It is, and that creates barriers for a lot of people.
It definitely makes those more affordable online options even more appealing.
For sure, but even online programs can have hidden costs.
That's true. And then there's the question of whether those alternative pathways are really valued by employers in the same way as a traditional degree.
That's a valid concern, and it's something that we need to consider as we think about the future of education.
So it's not just about making education accessible online. It's about making sure that all forms of education, online or offline, are affordable, high quality, and lead to real opportunities.
I couldn't agree more.
Okay, so much to unpack here, so many fascinating trends and challenges.
We've just scratched the surface.
Let's take a quick pause and then come back for part 2 of our deep dive.
Yeah.
We've got lots more to discuss.
So before the break, we were talking about lifelong learning. And what's really interesting is that it's not just, some trendy buzzword.
Right.
It's a fundamental shift in how we think about education and work.
Yeah, that old model of, get your degree and you're set for life.
It's just not realistic anymore.
It's gone.
Gone.
So with technology changing so rapidly, globalization,
All right.
the skills you learn today might be completely obsolete in a few years.
Exactly. And that's why this ability to, constantly be learning, adapting, reskilling throughout your life.
It's crucial.
It's essential. Yeah.
So, okay, how do we actually design education systems that support this idea of lifelong learning?
Right. It's a big
It
question.
can't just be tacking on a few extra courses here and there at universities.
No, it needs to be a more fundamental rethink.
So what, are we envisioning education as a continuous journey now instead of just a destination?
I think that's a really good way to put it.
So people can move between education and work more seamlessly.
Yeah. Upskill, reskill as needed, and access those learning opportunities throughout their lives.
Okay, so we're breaking down those traditional barriers between education and the workforce, making learning more integrated with our lives.
Exactly. It's not just about the structure of the system either.
What else is there?
It's about the culture, fostering a culture of lifelong learning.
What does that even mean?
It means encouraging people to be curious, to embrace those new challenges.
And to not be afraid to learn new things.
Yes, and to see learning as something that continues throughout your life, not something that just, stops when you finish school.
I like that. So it's about a shift in mindset more than anything.
I think so, yeah.
So this makes me think about, what about employers?
Yes.
Do they have a responsibility here to, support their employees' lifelong learning?
Absolutely. Forward-thinking companies, they're already recognizing that, investing in their employees' skills development.
That's not just a nice perk.
It's not just a perk, it's essential.
It's strategic.
It's strategic. It's about staying competitive.
So it's an investment in the company's future.
Exactly. And that shift in mindset, it's already starting to happen.
How so?
We're seeing more companies offering tuition reimbursement programs,
Oh, that's great.
partnering with educational institutions to create these customized training programs, even creating their own internal learning platforms.
So it's like the lines are blurring between traditional education and the corporate world.
Yeah, creating this more dynamic learning ecosystem.
That's really interesting.
It highlights the fact that learning, it's not confined to just the classroom anymore.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere, it's online, it's in the workplace, it's in our communities.
So we've talked a lot about, the challenges, the opportunities facing higher education in Europe.
Yeah.
But let's get a little more personal for a second.
Okay.
If you could design, the ideal higher education system for the future, What would that look like?
Ooh, that's a great question. If I had a magic wand,
Let's dream big.
right, I would create a system that is truly learner-centric,
Okay.
where individual needs and aspirations are really at the forefront.
Yeah.
It would seamlessly blend online and in-person learning, using technology to, personalize and enhance the experience.
Right.
And it would really, really focus on fostering critical thinking, creativity, collaboration.
All those essential skills.
It's preparing learners not just for, specific careers, but for a lifetime of learning and adapting.
I love that. A system where learning is actually joyful,
Hmm.
it's empowering,
Yes,
it's accessible to everyone, no matter their background,
absolutely.
and it prepares them not just for jobs, but for, like, a life of purpose.
That's the goal, right?
It is. It really is.
Creating a world where learning is this lifelong adventure,
I love
a
that.
source of personal growth and societal progress.
It's beautiful.
And it's a vision that I think is achievable, if we're willing to embrace change and work together.
I agree. It feels possible.
It does.
Now, we should probably acknowledge the elephant in the room,
Oh,
the EAHEA report. It was written before the pandemic.
yes.
And the pandemic,
Yeah.
it really forced educational institutions to adapt quickly to online learning.
Oh, absolutely. It accelerated everything.
And some people argue that those changes are here to stay.
I think there's a lot of truth to that.
So the pandemic, it was a catalyst, right?
It forced universities to confront the limitations of their traditional models and really experiment with new approaches.
And were there any successes? Did we learn anything from that kind of forced experiment?
We did. We learned that online learning can be effective,
Okay.
but it requires careful planning and execution.
It's not just, throwing a lecture online and calling it a day.
No, it's about creating those engaging, interactive experiences that still foster connection and community.
So again, it's about finding that balance
Right, that balance between technology and human interaction.
and recognizing that online learning isn't for everyone.
Exactly. We need to be flexible, offer a mix of options,
Yeah.
online, in person, blended.
To meet those diverse needs.
Absolutely. And it also, brought the issue of the digital divide to the forefront.
Oh, right, because not everyone had equal access to the technology or the resources needed for online learning.
Exactly. And that's something we really need to address.
What can be done?
We need to invest in infrastructure,
Okay.
provide affordable internet access.
Make sure everyone has the devices they need.
Yes, and the digital literacy skills to succeed in that environment.
So it's about creating a more equitable playing field.
That's the goal.
It's not just about the technology itself.
Right. It's about addressing the underlying social and economic factors that create barriers.
It's a bigger issue.
It is, and we also have to remember that technology is a tool, not a solution in itself.
Yeah.
How we use it in education matters.
So we need to be intentional.
We need to be thoughtful, make sure it's enhancing learning, not replacing that human connection.
Which brings us back to that idea of human-centered design.
Always.
We need to be designing these learning experiences that prioritize the needs and the well-being of learners.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about.
Not just like efficiency or the latest trend.
Right. Ultimately, education is about people.
Empowering individuals.
Yes. Helping them reach their full potential, contribute to their communities.
Make a positive impact on the world.
Technology can play a role, but it's not the whole story.
It's a piece of the puzzle. It is.
Well, this has been a really inspiring conversation.
I've enjoyed it.
Thinking about the potential for positive change in higher education.
It's an exciting time.
It is, and we're all on this journey together.
We are students, educators, policymakers, society as a whole.
We all have a role to play.
Absolutely.
So let's take another quick pause, and when we come back for the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore some specific actions we can take to make higher education more equitable, accessible, and engaging for everyone.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive into the future of higher education in Europe. We've talked about the trends, the challenges, the opportunities.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
So now, as we wrap up, let's focus on action. What can we actually do to make a positive impact on the future of higher ed?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
It's not enough to just talk about these things. We need to figure out those concrete steps that individuals, institutions, policymakers can take.
Okay, so let's start with individuals, students who are navigating this rapidly changing world of higher ed. What advice do you have for them?
I think the most important thing is to embrace that growth mindset, become a lifelong learner.
Yeah, those days of learning one set of skills and calling it a day.
They're over.
overdone.
The future belongs to those who can adapt, who are curious, who are always looking for new knowledge, new experiences.
So it's not just about, what you learn in school. It's about developing those skills to learn and adapt throughout your life.
Exactly, and don't be afraid to explore those alternative paths to education.
Right, because traditional
They're
universities,
still valuable, absolutely.
but they're not the only option anymore.
Boot camps, online courses, apprenticeships, there are so many ways to learn now.
It's like a choose-your-own-adventure for education, which is amazing, but it can also be a little overwhelming.
It can.
How can students figure out what's right for them with so many options?
Mentorship and guidance are key. Talk to people in fields that interest you, do your research, ask questions.
Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Exactly, and remember, there's no one right answer. And the path you choose, it's not set in stone. You can always adjust course along the way.
It's about taking ownership of your learning journey.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about educators? What role do they play in all of this?
Educators are essential. They're not just, standing at the front of the classroom lecturing anymore.
There's so much more than that.
They're facilitators, mentors, guides. They need to be comfortable using new technologies, experimenting with different teaching methods.
Creating those environments that foster collaboration, critical thinking.
All of that, yeah, moving beyond that traditional model.
So it's about creating those more engaging, interactive learning experiences.
Yes, and recognizing that students learn in different ways.
So we need to personalize the learning experience.
We do. We need to provide that personalized support.
That's a big shift for a lot of educators.
It is, but it's also incredibly rewarding seeing your students thrive, reach their full potential.
That's what makes it all worthwhile.
It is.
Okay, so finally, what about policymakers? Those folks making decisions about education systems. What can they do to ensure that higher ed is ready for the future?
Investment is key. They need to prioritize funding for education and research.
So we're talking about funding universities.
Yes, supporting the development of new technologies, new teaching methods, creating policies that make higher education more accessible, more affordable, more equitable.
So it's not just about, throwing money at the problem.
No, it's about strategic investment.
And creating those policies that encourage innovation and collaboration.
Exactly. Collaboration between institutions, businesses, government agencies. Everyone needs to be working together.
It's a whole system approach.
It is, with the ultimate goal of creating an education system that truly empowers individuals, strengthens communities, drives progress for everyone.
A system that prepares people for the challenges and the opportunities of a rapidly changing world.
Yes, equipping them with the knowledge, the skills, the values they need to thrive.
That's a beautiful vision.
It is. And while there will be challenges, of course,
There always are.
I'm optimistic. I think we have the knowledge, the tools, the passion to create a truly transformative learning experience for everyone.
Well said. And on that note, I want to thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the future of higher education in Europe.
It's been my pleasure.
It's been a fascinating conversation. And to our listeners, thank you for being part of this journey with us. Please don't forget to follow the European Association for Higher Education Advancement on YouTube and social media.